when you spend years tracking, restricting, labeling foods as good and bad, that is essentially what food noise is.
Maybe you're going for a walk, maybe you have an increase in exercise. What are some of the things that I might get a similar dopamine hit from before maybe I have my food reward?
I deserve a treat. And let me tell you something, you do. But it is a different type of hunger than physical hunger. Not necessarily meeting a caloric need, it's meeting a reward need.
It really needs to move out of the discussion of this is a moral failure and you just have a willpower issue and we all have the same amount of food noise, because sneak peek, we don't. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Thick Thighs Save Lives podcast. I'm Kelsey.
Hi, guys. Welcome back to another week of Psycho Crazy Lady alongside her co-host, Kelsey. Oh, did you know it? Do you want to know if it was you or me?
I wasn't sure. I was on the edge of my seat.
It's you and me. Surprise.
I like your cup, though. Does that have a top? Did you get that on Amazon?
It's got a lid. You know, I have a little regret about it because since I got this, I saw that they had the like wooden bamboo lids, the same cup with a wooden bamboo lid. And I was like, that's so much classier. Now I want to rebuy them, but you know what will happen. Eric will be like, you got a cup problem. You got a cup problem. That's what when new things are.
I'm like, we
need a
problem.
He just accused my son yesterday. We do like back to summer shopping because uniforms. So there's no like back to school shopping because you know what you're gonna be wearing. It's that scratchy freaking horrifying what do they make that shit out of? But then so we go back to summer shopping so where he can get like clothes to wear like for the summer, and he always gets his backpack, and he got a new backpack for the 4th grade. And Mark was like, you have a backpack problem. You don't need a new backpack every year. I had the same backpack for all my years at school, a JanSport that was $25. And I was like, okay, like
he remembers it's a JanSport.
I was like, first of all, but like, yeah, he accused Rory of having a backpack problem. Like whenever you have more than one of something, he thinks that's become a problem.
That's the standard for it being a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Every house just has their like things, though. You know what I mean? Like that you kind of feel like are normal, and everyone else just goes along with it. Like for Mark, like if you have more than one of something, it's like excessive. Whereas like,
do you know how many desk fidgets he has? Okay. It has its own he has to have like a display case for all the desk fidgets so he can select one, and then you never know if you're in a tapping mood or a spinning mood.
You don't actually.
I said, do you have a fidget problem? He said, I do have a fidget problem. The first step is admittance.
I will tell you guys this about backpacks. There's a special place in my heart for backpacks in kids because I feel like it's a signature thing, and I have very distinct memories about my backpacks. And I will tell you this, one of my most prominent memories, it's like a good and a bad thing, but when I grew up, we did not have, like, at this moment in my childhood, we definitely didn't have, like, money for a new backpack.
That was all of our childhood.
I know.
It wasn't a moment. I know, but we did. It's okay. She knows.
She knows. So I couldn't get a new backpack, but and I definitely couldn't get, like, one that was that had my personality, right? So what I did is I decorated my backpack, and I got this like puffy
I
paint
remember
from
this
the
one.
crafts upstairs, and I decorated this whole thing because I was in middle school and I wanted to I'm an expressive person, right? And it's translated really well to leggings and a bunch of cool patterns in my life. But in this moment, I couldn't express myself in the way that I wanted to, so I made this backpack with all of these sparkly things on it, and I was super proud of it, and I went marching into middle school with my sparkly backpack, and then I got into a fight over the backpack
It's true.
because it's a literal fight because the older girl said, like, "Who do you think you are with your sparkly backpack?" Little did they know I was someone without money for a new backpack, and I just wanted to make a cool backpack, but it went to, "Who do you think you are? You think you're this I don't know, what do you think you are when you have a sparkly backpack? The shit?
TMS.
Yeah, I
Too much
am."
sparkles.
Too much
Too much
sparkles.
sparkles.
I had too
Mm-mm.
much sparkles for the
Tone
middle
it down.
school.
You're shining too hard for middle
So
school.
a literal fist fight over this backpack, but I did not throw it away. I said, "I'm keeping my backpack." And that's who I am as a person. And Rachel remembers this because actually she came to the middle school
Well, I had
to
to lay
talk
down
to
the
some of
law.
these older girls.
Yeah, I had to lay down the law after that because nobody touches the sparkle that is my little sister, okay? Like, I will no, it's not gonna it's
No, that's
but I
2
do
types of
remember that
sisters.
backpack, and it was so cool. It was so
I
cool, you did
think
such a good job on it.
that's its own
Eh,
its own design, right?
I will never forget that backpack. It's
Right?
like a legend.
It is, and
It was
I
excessively sparkly.
it was.
I mean,
That
there's
I am
sparkles in men.
excessively sparkly.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Love it. Um, yeah, so I know, I remember those and the ones with your name on them that were embroidered.
Mm,
How
so
how'd
cool.
you
I had to
do
write
that?
mine.
Yeah,
So pretty.
I was like, "Mom, do you think is there any way we could make that, like, look like stitching?" Like, with the oh my god, that was so cool. Those
She did her
those
best.
those kids had money.
Yeah,
Um, I don't know, maybe that's why I agreed to the, like, Nike
nice.
Jordan backpack yesterday because I was like, "I never had this. You will have it, and you will not know the struggles."
I know. I know. We just try to do our generational better, but I think we're like, I don't know, we have our own flaws for sure. But
Mhm.
I was saying that to Matt. I'm like, our kids will never know some of these things that were such a struggle. And I'm glad for it, and I'm really proud of it. I just am like, wow, you get to drive our kids to school on their bike. That's such a cool thing. Like, I don't know. It's really cool.
I know. I there's always a line of, like, give more, and then when is it too much? Because I don't know, did the lack of a cool backpack make me who I am, or would I have been 100,000,000 times better if I just had a cool backpack? I don't know, we'll never know. Um, so you guys I know most people aren't even out of school yet, but, like, Florida is we're a little ahead of the curve, but, um you guys, we have a really cool episode for you today. Kind of thought up on a whim, I'm going to be honest, but I'm really glad that we went down this road because as we started building it out, we were like, holy shit, this is a great episode. This is going to answer so many questions that, like, are just outstanding that people are like, why on that?
Well, I think that, just in the thinking back to what has, transformed you, developed you who you are today, I think there are so many habits and thoughts around food that just are so prevalent in how we think about food, how often we think about food, and just what our relationship is with food today. And it's such a hard balance of trying to figure out what has been, what is now, how can we change these things, and what is actually, like, there's some science behind this, there's some biology behind this that isn't a moral failure, and that is specific to who you are and how you think about food. And I think when
How
we
the freaking hell did you tie that back to the backpacks? You have a special gift for that. We didn't plan that. You have a very special gift. I think if there's something you should do with that, I don't know, but how
I don't
did you
know, but
do
we'll
that?
find it. I'm doing it, but I got a podcast.
Shit. Wow. It's like
But
you
I
meant
do think
to.
it's like you meant to. I do think that, this discussion started with kind of, like, thinking about GLP-1s, and that was a really popular episode for a lot of people, so if you haven't listened to that episode yet, tune into that one because it answers a lot of questions about GLP-1s. I don't know who hasn't listened to it yet because that is a very popular episode, and it
That one
seems
blew up.
thousands of people have listened. So, but
Yeah.
if you haven't, yeah, that might be one you're interested in. But it brought up the discussion of food noise. And this is a really important one because when we talk about historically, when we talk about food noise in diet culture, we really equate that to a lack of willpower, a moral failure, and that is the category that we put food noise into. That some people who have we don't think about how much food noise they have, but we just think we all have the same amount of food noise. And some people have some type of moral failure that they're unable to ignore or differentiate which type of food noise it is and if it needs to be met. And I love this discussion because we're going to break that down. And we're going to talk to you about different types of food noise and honestly some biology behind food noise and how this isn't a moral failure. You're going to leave here with some actionable tips of how you can categorize food noise and how we can work on this together, but it really needs to move out of the discussion of this is a moral failure and you just have a willpower issue and we all have the same amount of food noise because sneak peek, we don't.
We don't. I love that GLP-1s have coined this term and brought it to the forefront because I think that people for a long time have known that they have some type of thing going on that they think about food maybe more than other people or less than other people, and they haven't been able to, like, sort of coin it or talk about it or give it a name, and I love that it has a name now. So, when we're talking about food noise, we are talking about, like, the amount of our thoughts that are going towards food and the amount of now, as Kelsey said, this was never a moral failure. This has so much biology behind it, and that's what I'm really excited to get into with this episode. So if you're someone that is on either end of the spectrum where you're like, I literally think about food every single second while I'm eating, I think about my next meal, and I've never understood why I'm like that. Or you're a person that's like, geez, food is like a very last kind of thought for me, and I've never understood why. Again, this is gonna hit for everyone, and it's gonna explain so much and validate you so much because it was never a willpower issue.
I also love to there's so many layers to unpack here when it comes to your history with food and when it comes to the availability of food. And there's so many layers here that the fact that we put this into some type of moral or willpower failure is such a weird thing. And honestly, I am
So lazy.
it's so lazy. It really is. And if you've ever just kind of for me, little people are, a big focus, but you can see a lot because this is just like a foundation where you know that there hasn't been a scarcity of food with my children and there hasn't been, an emphasis on food. And one of my children thinks about food and what the next meal is very consistently while she's eating. And it's just one of those things that you notice and you just say that's very interesting because when we kind of look at this over a length of time and we look at this over, history where people have become adults now and are thinking about why am I someone? Is everyone just immediately going to the cabinets? Does some people walk into someone's house and wonder where their snack cabinet is? And that's not every person, right? And it's very interesting that a 4-year-old, she knows where everyone's snack cabinet is in their house. If she's been there one time, she knows where your snack cabinet is. My son is just 1, but it doesn't seem to be a big interest so far. But it's very interesting because I think that when people are thinking about, like, is your automatic walk to the cabinets, are you is essentially, like, as soon as you're bored, do you walk over to the fridge and open it up? And, like, you think about these being just habits that have been formed over years, but is there something psychological, biological in there that has caused this that has nothing to do with your willpower?
The answer is yes.
The answer is yes.
The answer is yes. So I first want you to identify, because there are a number of behaviors that signal that your food noise may be somewhat on the higher end of the scale. These are behaviors like we've mentioned, the obvious, which is kind of like always looking, through the cabinets, whether bored or thinking you're hungry, just kind of thinking about the next meal w before you've actually received any maybe hunger cues, thinking about dessert before you eat dinner. Um, the other behaviors that I want to really hit on to make sure is, like, the restrictive ones too. If
Yeah.
you are a person who is constantly calculating your calories and your macros, this is a signal that you have a higher food noise than other people, because it's whether you're thinking about it in a way of like, I don't know, we're not moralizing food here, but good or bad, like, oh, I'm counting calories and macros. So that's like a good, positive food behavior. Or I'm thinking about dessert before I've eaten dinner, and that's like a negative. Both of those are the same in that they're food is a major thought, overcoming all some of the other thoughts that could be in your brain. And then, like, the feeling of being distracted. If you have seen something, smelled something, thought about a food, and then kind of can't move past until you get it, that's another example of, having a higher food noise than maybe some other people.
And I want you to get as you're listening to this, I want you to kind of think about how you would categorize yourself within these kind of examples of food noise. And it's just because, like, it will be really helpful as we move through this episode if you kind of see yourself in one of these categories, and how you might be able to put some habits in place and how we might be able to work with you towards your goals. But I also think on the other side of this has been a really helpful deep dive into food noise in an empathetic way for other people. If you're like, I'm not someone who thinks about, like, what's in the cabinets, what am I gonna eat later? Like, my food noise isn't that loud. But I think it's really helpful for you to also listen to this episode to think about how this might feel for someone else in your life, and
'Cause you
how
know
you
someone. If
you
it's
do.
not you, you know someone who does this. We all know someone who has these types of behaviors.
100%. Because, like, when you can actually, like, peel yourself out of it and think about it within the framework of empathy, and that this is this constant noise, you can respond better and you can be much helpful to other people if you understand, like, their food noise is really high. Sometimes I'm like, why are you thinking about food right now? Like, that doesn't even cross my mind. I don't know what we're having. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Like, it's just that it hasn't, but it's been really helpful with me, with working with other people, with understanding people around me, in a sense of, like, you are thinking about this all the time, and the more it's gaining anxiety, it's gaining momentum if we don't start to quiet down a little bit with some of these habits. So it can just be really empathetic for other people.
Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. And I don't think that it's coincidental that neither one of us consider ourselves to be people with fairly high food noise, when we have similar genetics and similar backgrounds when it comes to availability, how food was talked about in our house, all of these things. But it even goes further than that. So, the first thing that I want to get out there is that the reason that your brain thinks about food does not always have to do with hunger. Okay. Everybody's experienced a situation where they've eaten, they're full, they're satisfied, and they see something appetizing and they're like, that looks good. You're not hungry, right? Most people can agree that the majority of their thoughts surrounding food are not necessarily hunger cues. So your brain has a really lot of reasons to think about food, and calorie intake is only one of them. So let's talk about some types of food noise so you can sort of identify, and when you're experiencing food noise, you can kind of put it in a category of like, okay, what is this? Because just saying I must be thinking about food, meaning that means I'm hungry, is not necessarily. We live in such an excessive society that 9 times out of 10, you're probably not even hungry. But sometimes you are. So the first reason for food noise would actually be you are physically hungry. You need fuel. The signs of this would be things like stomach being empty, low energy, and food sounds really appealing. Nothing wrong with this. This is your body working correctly. I'm hungry. I was like, okay, you're empty. I need to put some fuel in you. Um,
Something I wanted to add on this one was there's a lot of sometimes when we do feel physical hunger cues and our brain is responding with something like you shouldn't be hungry, you ate an hour ago, or something along those lines, right? And you're like, but are these am I getting physical hunger cues? What something that I want to remind you is that just because you consumed food, you may not have consumed the correct amount of nutrients in whatever food that you did consume, and you're going to process that really quickly and you're going to be hungry again sooner, which is why we talk a lot about protein, we talk a lot about fiber on this podcast, but we talk a lot about nutrient dense foods that will keep you satiated for longer so that you aren't actually physically, because some of these are like you're judging the hunger cues that are actually real and they're coming in because you've just worked through the food that was not nutrient dense food and you worked through it really quickly and you are actually hungry again within a shorter time frame that you don't think you should be.
Not only that, but with regards to feeling like you're low on energy and you need calories to sustain, those are also could be a cue to previous food choices of extremely high spikes in blood sugar and then the blood sugar coming down and not necessarily feeling hungry, but having the energy from the calories just nowhere to be found. And lastly on that is we've s- as women, we've spent a lot of time in diet culture ignoring true physical hunger cues, making sure that we can go as long as we can without eating and putting off eating. And that has essentially, if you've ever done this at any point in your life, you have essentially damaged some of your physical hunger cues, because when your body feels physical hunger and it's real, if you ignore it, we have a balance that's out of place here. If
And
you
your
put it
body is gonna
off.
respond to that too. Like, you
Exactly.
continue to put it off and you say like, "No, you're not hungry." And I remember a very specific time where I was bouncing back, I'm using that term lately, bouncing back from, really heavy diet culture, and I was just deep into it. I had counted calories. I'd been on diets for so long that when I started lifting significantly, this is when I started CrossFitting, my hunger cues were coming in full steam because my body was expending more energy and needed more fuel. And I was like, what's going on here? I'm just hungry all the time. I'm failing. Like it was this clash of two worlds where my body was requesting very specific things. And my mind was going like, that's not how we work here. When we did the elliptical, we didn't feel so hungry all the time. I must be broken. Maybe it's my hormones. Maybe it's, and I just want to, everyone who's gaslighting themselves when they start to feel increase in hunger cues, if you start to do something like increase in exercise or increase specifically in weightlifting because your muscles require a lot energy. If you feel an increase in those hunger cues, I don't want you to gaslight yourself into feeling like those aren't physical hunger cues. I must be in the secondary category that we're going to, talk about. But when you are on this kind of like yo yo of restriction, when your body is sending you physical hunger cues, it can be very confusing on
Very
how to listen.
confusing.
It's very confusing on how to listen and what's real and what's not real. And I just want to like normalize that for a second for you.
Absolutely normal. That's why we're creating these categories because if hunger isn't just hunger, it can be categorized into many different types of things. But yes, we absolutely should stop gaslighting ourselves as women to the fact that we don't feel real physical hunger and that we could just go a little longer. My God.
Or you know what
Okay.
the other one we do is we go, and this a lot of people, you do this. You say like, "Well, I must not be hungry because I have plenty of fat to lose." It's like, that's not how that works.
We actually are going to get into that.
We're gonna
Why
get
that's
into
like
that.
opposite land.
We're gonna take a quick break to get you a whole bunch of friends.
Do you like friends?
We have about 80,000 amazing women friends, more than that, in one space that can't wait to cheer you on in your fitness journey.
Whether it's lifting you up, getting you motivated to get to the gym, complimenting your outfit, we have gathered 80,000 of the best women on the planet and put them all in one place for your friendship pleasure.
Honestly, I would just like pull out some of the amazing quotes from the group because, like, you would think groups like this, you're like, I don't know. And I'm telling you, once you enter in the door, the virtual door, because you can do this anywhere, that you will find the most supportive community you have ever known. And it's called Stronger Together by CVG. You can find us on a Facebook group. It's a closed group, women only, and you got to get in there.
Get in there. It's so inspiring. Join us today. Okay, so the second category when we're feeling hunger is reward hunger. So an example of this would be if you've had a rough day at work, if your kids are finally in bed, it's Friday night. These are things where you are satiating a need with a food. So I deserve a treat. I deserve a treat. And let me tell you something. You do. You do. But it is a different type of hunger than physical hunger because it is not necessarily meeting a caloric need, it's meeting a reward need, right? So, like, food is in the current world we're in, food is one of the fastest and easiest hits of dopamine that you can possibly get. It is widely accessible for a lot of people, and it gives you that dopamine that your brain is searching for when it wants a reward. So sometimes you're not necessarily hungry for food, you're hungry for fucking relief from
Need some dopamine. Your brain wants a dopamine hit, and sometimes, elongated dopamine hits are looking like you're scrolling or you're watching TV and you're throwing things in your mouth, and like you're not hungry during those moments, but you're hungry
you're
for
hungry
something.
for something.
You're hungry for something.
Think so me a Coke. Did you know this is just an aside, but did you know, and I want you to think about this in a way that it suits you. But there are a lot of links to neurodivergence in people with ADHD having increased food noise because of the lack of dopamine or the excessive need for dopamine in their brain. And a lot of people with ADHD or undiagnosed ADHD unknowingly are receiving those dopamine hits through food choices. So it's just like talk about, like,
So there's
this
a
is
whole
so much more than just willpower.
There's so
Like,
much more. There's a tactical feedback there too, because I call it my fiance needs his crunchies. He comes back, he always needs these crunch it's very specific. His food noise is for crunchy things, and it's like the pretzels is like and you can watch his dad do the same thing. It's, like, really funny because, like, are they hungry? No. Are they walking around with some type of, like, nervous energy needing some, like, crunchies? Yes. And they're getting that tactical feedback of, like, you're not actually hungry, but you do need a hit of dopamine and you need,
yes.
like, tactical feedback in your mouth and getting something crunchy. And I just want, like, there's definitely for you guys out there that are listening to this, that might resonate with some of you where you just go, like, I don't know, I just need something crunchy. Like, that's not a hunger cue, but you are looking for something. You're looking for some feedback. You're looking for a dopamine hit. You're looking for some feedback that might be, something physical for some of us, and it's something crunchy. And maybe what are some other ways we could get that? Or what are some ways that you can keep some crunchy things on hand that you don't feel so terrible after you have them?
The third type of hunger category that we're gonna talk about is restricted hunger, and this is not a hunger, "I need calories, I need to refuel," this is, I have made something impossible to have, so now it's the only thing I can think about, and everybody knows this trick, every psychologist knows this trick, don't think about the pink elephant, what'd you guys just think about? If we do this with food, we will create another type of hunger category, which is I can't stop thinking about the thing I said I can't have. And that's a slippery slope.
It's such a slippery slope, and it's an important one to talk about with diet culture, because when we start to say to ourselves, I cannot have this thing, and this is something that has worked its way into your habits, this is something that has worked its way into your dopamine fixes, this is something that you typically enjoy, but you have overconsumed, and it's on a daily basis that you do this, and you've decided I cannot have this, and it's in this restrictive category of diet culture. And then you find out that you are thinking about it all the time. And then when you finally succumb to having the thing that you're thinking about all the time, you say, "Well, I just don't have any willpower. I'm such a loser. I can't even do this." And you look around and you say, somehow other people are able to not have this thing all the time. I can't understand why I'm truly thinking about it all the time. And I just wanna say, that's real.
If
It's
you thought about something 55 times today and I thought about it 0, is that a willpower issue?
Is that a little bit you fought it 55 times. I fought it 0 times. Is that a willpower issue?
Fun.
So, I mean, this is why that restrictive eating is such a failure. It's the restrictive eating that's a failure, not you. This is why it's such a failure, because when we put these things into these, you cannot have this whatever item, it takes over, and you want it more and more and more, and you're thinking about it more and more and more. And that's why it just really becomes louder. And we would be remiss if we didn't talk about it within the food noise spectrum, because it is so loud for you.
It's so loud.
And I'm not saying you can't have foods that you want to limit, or you wanna say, like, I think about this all the time, or I eat this way too often, and it's not serving me. There are different ways that we can go about that than putting it in this, I no longer have whatever ice cream or whatever the thing is that you're really struggling with, so
It's
that it
always ice
moves
cream.
into this restrictive thing. You know
It's
what's
always
funny
ice
about
cream.
ice cream is we're driving in the car, and my daughter goes, "Why doesn't Rory like ice cream?" I'm like,
What you thinking about ice cream back there? You know who else was thinking about ice cream? No one.
but, like, why doesn't and I said, "What's something that you don't like?" Because it's important to understand that we all are thinking about food differently, and some people don't like food. And then I was like, "That's how he thinks about ice cream." How you think about tomatoes. I think it was tomatoes. Don't like tomatoes
It's a short
unless
it's a
it's on a
short
salad.
list of things she
I'm
doesn't
like,
like.
that's
Very
how
short
so
list.
every time you look at tomatoes, that's how he sees ice cream. We're just all different.
We're we're all different. That is what I really if there's one message that I leave this podcast with, it's that biologically, psychologically, habitually, we are all so different and we are not experiencing the world all the same. And if you try and moralize that, it's just a freaking that's such a failure. That's such a failure to people to try to moralize all these completely different experiences. Um, so restrictive hunger, please, the more forbidden a food is, the louder the noise, the volume turns up on it. So try. And lastly, I want to talk about environmental hunger because I think this one surprises people a little bit. You weren't hungry, but then you walked by a bakery, you smell popcorn, you went into the movie theater and it's literally reeking of I mean,
Your
I wasn't
clothes
hungry
leave
for
town.
popcorn before I went in there. You
But
go to
then
the
the hot
grocery
butter.
store. Hot butter. And then suddenly, all of a sudden, you are in an environment where food sounds amazing. That's not our hunger cue. That is, we have evolved to notice food. And thank goodness for that. Because if we didn't, the hunter gatherers would have been in real big trouble if they didn't
They
even
wouldn't have been able
notice
to
when they
find
were
it.
walking by. They would have never, like, this is what I'm saying. We are hardwired to notice food. And so when you're walking around in an environment where it's literally everywhere, you're noticing it and you're cueing like, that sounds good. Is it necessarily a hunger cue? No, but like, let's just not beat ourselves up over the fact that our brain is noticing food because it's what it's designed to do.
Everyone who's ever gone to the grocery store hungry.
Ugh,
You get home and you're like, "What?"
this. I don't even.
I don't even know her. Like,
This is what I'm
what
saying.
was I
Things
thinking
I
at
did
that
when I was
time?
hungry.
Yeah.
It's a
Like,
different person. Okay,
oh,
so if food noise can come from all of those different types of categories, actual hunger, reward, restriction, and environment, how often are we responding to the wrong signal? Um yeah, I mean, probably pretty often because the modern world is giving us constant reminders. So it's important, I think, to just like consider that, to think about it, to be able to
it's like,
conceptualize
just
this.
ask yourself that question. Like, when food instead of judging it, "Oh, I'm always this," or oh, here I go again." Just ask yourself, one quick check-in with my body here. Am I actually hungry? Am I responding to something? Am I feeling some type of way? This is really going to help you navigate the food world and the food noise. If we can ask some pretty simple questions of ourselves and not anyone else around us or even any answers that we have in the podcast. But if you check in with your body and ask, what am I responding to? Free of judgment, though. That's a really important part of this because if you say, I'm not responding to physical hunger, but I do have a need because my kids just went to bed. I'm really exhausted. I'm really tired. Exhausted and tired. Those were separate.
I mean, you know what I mean, right? The kids
Need.
just went to bed. You know how I'm
And it was a
feeling.
fight. You should tell Matt they were
They may get
tackling
up
each other
in 5
in the
minutes.
bathtub, and I stopped tackling each other in the bathtub. "What do you guys do?" And like, "What is happening?" But your need of something, and that may the response in that moment may be whatever treat I'm gonna air bunny is, whatever it is that you've decided that you do need. But I think we can look at that honestly, and sometimes you might respond in a different way. I do need something right now. I personally have said, like, "What is it that I need?" And sometimes I'll be like, "I need a nice little stretch." Like, and
Mm.
I'm not saying that's it for everybody, but I'm just inserting something else that might be a response that might give you a similar feedback that you're looking for, that you might be able to respond in a different way because you do need something. That's real.
You
But like,
do need something. There's no sense in depriving yourself from a treat. However, a treat can come in so many forms, and sometimes it is gonna come in food, and sometimes that's appropriate, and sometimes it's gonna come in a walk. I My treat is a bath. I need to have a bath.
yeah.
Sometimes it's in a dance party.
Mhm.
There's
Sometimes
so
it's a
many
stretch
different
and
types of
then a dance party, or a
I mean,
stretch
you
and then
never
a
know.
cookie. It
You
might be
never know.
1 or 2, it might be like both of the like, I'm gonna do some breath and some stretching first, and then I'm gonna have a cookie. Like, it might be both of those things, which is fine, but
Take
we
it. Take it
take it.
all.
But let's, like, ask ourselves. Let's, like, truly ask ourselves.
I want to talk for a second about why diet culture has contributed to such a vast increase in food noise and why so many people are reporting having significant amounts of food noise. Um, I, I'm not blaming diet culture, but I'm blaming diet culture because the fact is when you spend years tracking, restricting, labeling foods as good and bad, saying I can't eat that right now. I'm being a good girl. We just made 60% of the day thinking about food. Bad, good, indifferent. We're thinking constantly about food, and that is essentially what food noise is.
And it really contributes to those moments that you are feeling stressed and are feeling overwhelmed, or you're feeling like you need to have a need met. Or when we're, all sitting around at a table and someone brings out cookies and you immediately, like, you can't move past it until you want to have one of those. But now you're going back and forth saying, like, I've been good today, I've been bad today. How is this going to contribute to my caloric intake? And now you've given it so much where energy goes, where what is it? Where thoughts goes, energy flows. So as soon as you get on that path and you start to feed it, really, it takes over. It really does. And that the restriction that you have experienced in your life is going to significantly impact how much food noise you have today. And that's not a forever thing, honestly. Like, so many of us are on our journey to working through some of that, giving some different thoughts around food. And it's a roller coaster out here. If you talk about anyone who's recovering from any type of restrictive diet lifestyle, they'll tell you those thoughts come back up and you have to work through it. But it's one of those things that I think that when you sit there and you say, like, I could not stop thinking about those cookies that came out, just have the cookie and then go on with your conversation. And that can be a part of your healing.
Normalize that. Normalize that because every scientific study we have on restriction comes out the exact same way. You are not some leper that is like, "Oh my god, why am I this way? I struggle with my morality." It's like we've done this scientific experiment over and over, the Minnesota starvation experiment. It's the same result. If you restrict food from people, they will become obsessed with food. Do you remember that the study, the guys started, like, obsessively collecting cookbooks
Yeah,
and, like,
100%.
just, like, staring at them in their free time? This is a normal human behavior, is to become obsessed with the thing that you're restricted from. So the less we I mean, ironically, the less we restrict something, the less obsessed we can be with it, and so if you're looking to turn down the volume, we need to think first about the amount of
The
power
restriction.
that we're
Mhm.
giving to the restriction in general. Um, Now the real question. Why are there some people that have food as, like, last on their list? Because I'm telling you, I have when I people that I know that have a significant amount of food noise are just like, "I don't understand how everybody isn't planning their next meal while they're eating? Like, how are you guys doing this? Did your like did your mom teach you something when you were little that my mom didn't teach me? Is there like a thing that you're doing? What do I got to do? Like, are you going on a hyperbaric chamber at night? Like, what's happening? Why is my brain like this and your brain isn't? And I think that understanding this gives us all the empathy we need for ourselves and for the people in our life to move forward
Yeah.
appropriately.
Appropriately, because I think some of you guys are thinking about, like, that when you're looking at someone, you're like, "How did you forget to" I've been thinking about food all day, you forgot to eat? Like, are you okay? And or, like, that they feel done and they leave half a cookie on it, or they have, ice cream that they don't feel calling from their fridge, where you're like, "I cannot keep this thing in the house because, like, I can't keep myself away from it." And I think this is very interesting and does cause it's a really lot of empathy because, um, on the flip side of that, sometimes when when you're in touch with your body and when you're done, you're done. I don't need the other half of the cookie or like I'm not going to eat the rest of that. Where like, I've been around people that have been like, "You're just throwing that away." Well, I might as well eat it. And I say to myself, this is something that I've used in my why? Or we have to eat everything that's in the fridge because it's gonna go bad. I'm like, what? We don't have to. I'm not a garbage can. That I don't want to have that. Like, you know what I mean? It's like this scarcity and it does come back to like, your upbringing, but it just has to we have to understand that these are not we're not the same path. Like, there are some people who are like, "How could you leave that other cookie, half of the cookie there? I can't stop thinking about it." And I just think it has so much empathy where we just realize that like we're not all experiencing this in the same way.
Not on a level playing field.
No.
This is not, and again, when we start to really take this and run with it, we can gain so much insight and actually be the masters of our own ship. So, okay, we're playing a different biological game. Every person is using a different handicap in golf, okay? Like, we wouldn't all use the same handicap as Tiger Woods because that wouldn't make any sense. Biologically, there are people who have significantly varying levels of hormone that control their hunger. Okay. We know the two hormones, ghrelin and leptin. One is the hungry hormone, one is the I'm full hormone. We can test those levels in people and see that they are dramatically different from person to person. Now, the why that is there's a number of factors behind that, but just knowing that we aren't hormonally all on the same playing field as far as like, I'm hungry, I'm done, is a really important thing to understand. And some of it is just your biology. It literally has nothing, it's your genetics. It has nothing to do with anything that you can control. So, yes, can we optimize hormone levels? Sure. But even then, we are still going to naturally be on different playing fields based on our genetics. Um, that's why we can eat the same breakfast, me and you. 2 hours later, you're starving. 2 hours later, I am done. I have no hunger cues whatsoever. That is because it's not about what we ate, it's about how our brain is interpreting what we ate. And that is a hormonal response, literally
100%.
biological response, not your
Well,
brain.
there's the hormonal response, there is how your brain is responding to the food, there is how your body is processing food, what your basal metabolic rate is. Like there's just so many variables there that I think that like when we look at, general population, we're looking at what I eat in a day and we're like, I'm going to follow that influencer because I want to have my body look like that and I'm going to eat exactly what she does. And then we're like, well, why didn't that work? Well, you're not even in the same game.
I'll say this, even if you measure your hormonal levels on those two hormones and mine, even then, if they're exactly the same, let's say that we measure out exactly the same. Think of it like kind of like caffeine. Like, you introduce something to the body and people respond in all different ways. Like, their response of their body. Some people receive caffeine and they're like, "Holy moly, I'm hyper focused. This is awesome." Some people have anxiety off the charts. Some people don't even feel anything. They're like,
I'm gonna go take a nap.
I don't I could
Yeah.
literally I could fall asleep after this. Now,
Mhm.
there are varying reasons beyond that too, but you need to understand people's bodies are responding in different ways. Same signal, different response. So even if we have all the same hormone levels, even if you optimize them, your body is responding to those two hormones differently than mine is. So one thing that I do want to mention, because I've been asked this a lot, and I think that it matters. The amount of body fat that you're carrying plays a significant role in the amount of leptin that you're giving out into your body, because leptin is uh it's made in body fat cells. So that's where it's released. So if you have more fat tissue, generally you are producing more leptin. This is a weird one because that's the I'm full. But this is so interesting that when scientists study this, when people are making more of the hormone that tells them that they're full, their brain is less responsive to it
Mm.
because it's out there in excess, and it's kind of like insulin resistance. Think of it like that. Like, you you are producing this chemical, this hormone, but because it's in excess, your brain isn't recognizing it in the same way as the same amount produced in somebody else. So if you say, like, well, I'm carrying so much body fat, I shouldn't be hungry all the time. Look at all this extra. Why would I feel hungry? Nope. That's actually the opposite.
For a lot of people, that was really frustrating information.
I know. I'm
But
sorry.
I
But
totally
also
understand.
vindicating.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Like, yeah, it definitely is like, oh, well, that makes sense. But honestly, we did an episode on kind of like maintenance and how much easier it is to gain muscle back if you've already experienced it. And like this just for me, it constantly brings it back full circle that like maintenance is so much easier than the building part for so many reasons. There are hormonal factors in there, but like that it's just so much easier for some people that are in the maintenance phase when rather if you're in the building phase and you feel like, wow, this is much more difficult than it feels like it should be for some of these people, you're right. And if that wasn't frustrating enough of the, all of these different levels, how our brain is responding is very different to the levels of leptin or ghrelin that is being sent to the brain, our brain is responding different. If that wasn't frustrating enough, I want to insert the fact that this also varies on a daily basis. Not only person to person and how your brain is experiencing, but it varies on a daily basis. And sleep plays a significant role in how your body is going to respond on a daily basis. So if you have a poor night of sleep, this might be frustrating or validating. I don't know. You decide. But if you have a poor night of sleep, you have an increase in ghrelin. So you have an increase in your hunger cues the next day, and you have a decrease in leptin. So you have a decrease in in how your body is responding to I'm full and an increase in hungry based on your poor night of sleep. A lot of people are like, yeah, that sounds about right because when you're coming off of a really poor night of sleep and you're like I need some pick me ups, I need some energy, I need something,
Treats.
treats, and you're craving higher calorie foods, which is what I'm going for the treats.
That's real.
That's real. You're not broken. That is very real, and there's a lot of biological reasons behind this because sleep is so important for every function in our body, for our brain function, for our organ function. Like there's so many different reasons, but so there's a reason why you're saying like, okay, well, send out these hunger hormones. We've got to get some more energy in here. Let's not tell ourselves when we're full quite as easily. But I know that can be really frustrating for a lot of people, but that's where we kind of like look for those higher nutrient dense foods on poor nights of sleep. Believe me,
That's
I
that's
hear you.
one poor night of sleep.
Yes.
If you are a person who struggles with sleep on a consistent basis and you are having a lot of trouble with food noise, that's not a coincidence. Nothing about that is a coincidence. It's biologically all correct. You're functioning just like you were made to. It's there's a piece missing. And then we also would be remiss because you said about the maintenance being so much easier. We would also be remiss if we did not look at the fact that your diet history and where your body fat percentage history plays a significant role in how your hormones are regulating as well. So, like, we can take two women that weigh 150 pounds, and one of them is experiencing hunger in a significantly different way. If one of them lost 40 pounds to be there, right? We've talked about this on past episodes. It's just the body trying to regain what it considers to be normal, which is a previous weight that you have been at. And you're not going to experience hunger in the same way. The person who lost 40 pounds to be at that weight is experiencing significantly more food noise. And this is tested and proven than the person who is comfortably there and has maintained that weight for years. So, like, these are real things.
Hey, you.
Thanks for getting in touch with the Thick Thighs Save Lives podcast.
We love your questions and adore hearing from you.
Leave us a hello,
A burning question,
feedback.
or anything else you want to share with us on the podcast.
We will play your message live on air if we can.
Thanks for being an amazing friend. Stay safe and moving. I do want to talk about people who experience food rewards differently, because I think that there's a lot of shame and judgment around us and um, how we just experience food rewards because this is very real. So there is there's a lot of science behind this, and there's a lot of studies that have shown the difference between that food noise or that food reward and how some people are experiencing them very differently.
I am so interested in this because there can be
Little
two
treat.
people. Yeah, a little trick. There can be two people we're gonna walk by the same smell. One person smells it and thinks like, that smells good," and moves on, and the other person smells it and thinks about it for the next 2 hours and cannot get that out of their head until they receive that food. And that is because we are not on the same playing field. We are experiencing reward from hunger in different categories, and that can have to do with so many different things: previous experiences with food, genetics, the food environment you grew up in or and are currently in. Um,
Dopamine pathways.
your specific dopamine pathways, the way that your frontal lobe is processing the dopamine. It's like literally food reward isn't equal for everyone. Some people do not feel a strong drive to reward themselves with food. And some people, it is the best reward that they could possibly receive. And these are not morality failures. These are just two people that are wired differently on a genetic level and on an environmental level.
I do want to pause on the dopamine rewards though, because I think that this is something that if you're listening, this is something that you can contribute to when you are thinking about different dopamine rewards. And if you have a history of getting your dopamine rewards from foods that are less desirable for you in your current state, there is something that you can do. And when it comes to filling those dopamine rewards, we have to think about, like, you need to fill that isn't a willpower issue of like, well, I just won't get that dopamine then. Like, that doesn't sound like a great plan of willpower. So what are you going to replace it with? So we have to find different pathways that you are going to increase dopamine in your brain in order to fill that need, right? The need doesn't go away, but you have to fill it in some type of way. And you've decided that the way that you have been doing it in the past is an undesirable behavior for you because you don't want to continue filling it with food rewards. We want to have other tools in our toolbox, right? So think about different ways that you could do this. I know personally, I get a lot of dopamine from exercise. We all do. It's a brain.
Science says we all do.
It's a sign thing. So if you are thinking about like, I typically have a lot of, instead of restricting the type of foods that you're going to get your dopamine from, instead of putting them on the restrictive list so you think about them all the time, think about what we can add to our in a daily basis that we're going to get dopamine from. Maybe you're going for a walk, maybe you have an increase in exercise, maybe you love to swim, whatever it is that you can think about, what are some of the things that I might get a similar dopamine hit from before? You don't have to eliminate them, but before maybe I have my food reward, so that we can kind of train and replace some of those pathways to get you in a place where you're happy with where you're getting your reward system from.
Absolutely. Because we aren't going to take out the need for rewards, but we can drive and control sort of what we decide our rewards should be on any given day. And that does not mean that they're never going to be food. It just means that there are so many categories that food can be one of many reward systems that you set up with enough thought and planning and understanding of what your brain is actually asking for. Um, I also just want to lastly hit on the fact that, like, there's trauma. There's trauma that continues to plague you in ways that you may not be recognizing with regards to food noise, and these were not things that you chose, and they're also, I don't think, things that, your parents meant to damage you with. But if you came from a house that, you know, you're not done until the plate is clean. We don't waste food. If we're going away, we eat the fridge down, even when we're not hungry, even when we're not desiring those types of foods. If you can't have dessert until you eat all of your food, these are, I think, well meaning, but many of us are millennials listening to this, and many of us had to finish the pork chops before we left the table. And that internally disrupted our regular systems for regulation of our hunger hormones. It did, and it also created pathways in the brain that were rewarding for finishing a plate of food and feeling shame for not finishing a plate of food. And just so you know, those things don't just go away because you grew up and you're older now and you know better, or maybe you are still in an environment in which there is a scarcity of food and you couldn't possibly think about not eating the entire package or wasting any food. So I just want to remember when you were saying about the marshmallows,
Mhm.
the experiment where they put the marshmallow in front of a child and said, like, if you can't, this is like a stale marshmallow, if you can put off eating this in an hour, we'll give you a fresh one. And then they kind of judged morality or later
Willpower.
success,
Mhm.
willpower of the kid based on their ability to
Receive delayed
delay
gratification.
right,
Yeah.
delay, that's what they were equating to success. However, now, if we put all of the findings of this podcast into that experiment, we could see why that is extremely flawed because we are not all on the same playing field when it comes to food as a reward, food as scarcity, food as being able to be something that we can wait for or not wait for. These are just, it's not tied to how good of a person that you are.
I think it's important too when you're when you're deciding like, "Oh, I have some of these reward systems that are strongly anchored in food rewards and they happen to be all of the most undesirable foods and I only feel good if I have some of these foods." And like that is again strongly rooted in your upbringing and how food was used, whether it was clear your plate or whether it was when we have a good day, we have chocolate and you just those reminiscing feelings are pathways that have been built. And again, like that wasn't every household. Maybe that was your household. And when you felt joy and when you felt love and when you felt connection, it was surrounding certain foods. And those probably didn't involve broccoli. So we
I never
have those,
celebrated one time with broccoli.
they just probably didn't. And it's a
You
flawed
like, think
system.
about little kids when they win the baseball game. Let's all go out for ice
100%.
cream. I mean, it's a cultural thing. It's even outside of your household. There's a culture built around food as a reward. So
It's built it's
you can't escape
anchored.
it.
It's anchored there, and if we don't recognize that when we're looking at some of the pathways that have been built, and when we do look for rewards or when we're feeling lonely and we're feeling, like we need connection and we need something, and we go towards these foods who have historically held that connection, that emotional response to something that made us feel love, that made us feel connection, that made us feel something that we're looking for, it's not a mistake. It's been there for many, many, many years. It's been hardwired into your brain. And when we look to make new pathways, we have to replace instead of restrict. So, what might we be actually looking for during those moments that we're looking for some of those rewards or we're looking for a certain feeling that we're turning immediately to some of these very specific foods? How could we get that in a different way? And that's why like the psychological impacts of food are so deeply rooted because it's it's from the development of your brain. I mean, like, early on, we really have done this, to children to decide, like, this is how we reward, and then when you get older, you say, like, we don't do that anymore, that reward was bad." It's like, that's very confusing.
Very confusing. Very confusing. I have, like, decades built on that when you do something good, you have ice cream. Like,
Yes.
decades. I
So now
you
when you do
know
something good, you don't have ice cream, and now
wait,
that's bad? It's like,
when did we stop
"What?"
that?
Yeah.
Was it, like, it was a cutoff? Like, it was, like, 20? Or was it, like, 30? Or when I I'm really, really wanting to press home with this episode that, this is not as simple as we once thought it was. This is not as simple as you know, morality. Some people are good, some people are bad, some people have more willpower, some people don't. This is on in a biological level that has so much more to do with whether you can say no or yes to the cookie on that day. And that is why we are seeing so much success with GLP-1s because when you are able to turn down the volume for some people, they are now on an equal playing field as other people who have had the volume turned down the whole entire time. And I just it's not that, wow, some people think about food way less. They must be so disciplined.
So
It's
disciplined.
it's not that. And I think
They
when you
haven't fought a single
understand that,
battle you fought today, but okay.
but okay. I mean, you're 16 battles deep and somebody else is literally 1 or 0 and we're equating that to like, wow,
Your
you really
failure.
suck. You
Yeah.
really suck. But the truth is that we are influenced by so many more factors and you know, if we can recognize that and we can there are now scientific ways that we can solve that with actual GLP-1s and different drugs, and then there are also psychological healing that we can do if some of these things are more based in habitual things or previous beliefs about foods or not
Yeah,
having enough food.
starting to question some of those beliefs, have different answers, get more in touch with what your body's cues are actually telling you and what that response might be. And that can just come from questions that you're going to ask yourself today. Am I actually hungry? Are these physical hunger cues? Am I looking for an emotional response? Like just asking yourself and checking in with your body is really the first step to figuring out how we want to then respond. And if we can, thirdly, make some of those habitual adjustments to some of the hunger cues, and that's not in a restrictive way, that might just be inserting a different, response initially before you go to maybe something that you are craving. Like, I'm going to stretch first, I'm going to go for a walk first. If you insert a disruptor in some of those for that habit, you might be very surprised at what the results will be over time and how happy you are with your response to what your body's needs are and the habits that you're looking to build over time. So these are kind of like just three categories that we're kind of like loosely putting this into for things that you can do today that might help you first recognize and make adjustments to some of the food noise that you do have.
I hope that this has been helpful. It was unbelievably eye opening for me to research because, the more you know.
The more you know.
Can we put up that star? Oh no, it's trademarked. You guys know the one I'm talking about. PBS.
Yes.
We love you guys. We'll talk next week.